Today we get to see a guy in Salt Lake City who just makes bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. Hi friends, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your co-host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Mountain Man Medical has name brand proven trauma medical supplies with a price match guarantee to ensure you get the right gear at the right price. Check them out at get-asp.com/mountainman. This whole encounter began as a carjacking where a man was carjacked at gunpoint. Multiple people called it into 911. The officers located the car just a few minutes later and are in fresh pursuit of it. What they don't know is that the man who is behind the wheel is a legit war hero with 1 tour in Iraq, 3 tours in Afghanistan as a Special Forces combat medic. Dude was a decorated veteran, was being seen because in his last deployment he had gotten a significant TBI, had also gotten some significant PTSD. We don't know what caused him to snap. The officers are about to encounter him when he wrecks up the car.
Orange Street, 100 south. Out. No, he's going to passenger. 184. Show me your hand. Shots fired! Shots fired! Is he out? Is he out? No, he's going to passenger. 184.
You could see the officers fired at him a whole lot. It was only when he came out of the car that they actually got hits on him. He did die of his injuries. I've put a link in the description. His wife even said, man, that these officers were justified in what they did, and they did what they had to do, and she's sad for that, but she understands, and that he would have understood if he was in his right mind in the moment. I actually have also linked, there's a GoFundMe for his widow and their children, and if you feel so inclined to that, I think given the totality here, as terrible and ugly as this is in every capacity, that maybe some compassion should lead us to help. You know, I will say this, Mike, I think that a lot of people, they watch the channel and they go, gosh, this stuff happens all the time. Man, this is the stuff that makes national news, and that's why we end up seeing it on social media and why it ends up here. This kind of stuff doesn't happen to people every day. It's a very rare occurrence in law enforcement, actually. Let's think about the lessons. First and foremost, I am a veteran. In fact, I'm actually a disabled veteran, and so I obviously have great affinity for my fellow brothers and sisters who wore the uniform. I never was in a combat zone, but listen, I love that we see these kinds of, I hate that we see these kinds of things, but I love that we see veterans going and getting help. And this man was going and getting help. And I think that the veteran community is resilient and strong, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. I hate this outcome. I hate that this happened to this man, and I don't know what caused him to snap, but hear me. If you're a fellow vet and you need some help, please go to the VA and get it. Please go and get the help that you possibly can, and follow through with your therapies, because obviously this is a kind of outcome and the kind of bad thing that goes down that is utterly terrible, reprehensible, and just, I'm sure, tears this man's family apart to this day. Okay, that said, and with all the compassion in the world, we got to talk about this incident from the perspective of the officers who don't know any of that about this guy, and they're going to pile out here and have a guy who they know has just carjacked somebody at gunpoint and is a lethal threat to the entire community, an active and ongoing threat. And Mike, I think the first thing that we got to think about here is, as these guys, he's going to wreck his car up, and they know that he's armed and he's going to come out shooting at them, that they're going to have to get fire back. And we joke about this sometimes, you know, what is the #1 cause of reloading in gunfights? And that is missing. And often your very first shot is your very best shot, and so you better make it count.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what you said at the beginning there, John. I think you were pretty spot on with what you said about veterans. And I think people should understand that after a TBI, especially with PTSD on top of it, your brain doesn't work like it used to work. It's not a choice. It's not a matter of trying to get better or therapy. You need all the help you can get, but your brain is altered. And this is something I'm sure he would not have done otherwise. With that said, I'm a fan of a rifle here. If you are on patrol, whether you're in a cool car like this, you're in a marked unit, a rifle accessible from the front seat, so in some kind of locking mount between the front seats or over the headboard or whatever, headliner, where you can get to it easily. Because if you're bailing out here with a rifle, this gunfight is a lot shorter than it ended up being, and you're not running out of ammo probably at any point from any of your magazines, because these shots are super duper gimmies at this distance with an AR platform rifle.
Yeah, and I think definitely that is a useful tool. Now, first thing I see here on the first reload is the officer runs Winchester, and I see this very commonly, that I think this is actually a range scar, that they don't want to drop their magazine because I often train on outdoor ranges that are either snowy or dirty or muddy or dusty, and so they stow those magazines. Listen, drop them to the deck. It's a Glock, for golly's sakes. The magazines will handle it. You want to drop free that mag because you already want to be getting to your spare source of ammunition. Certainly as a law enforcement officer, I suggest you carry a minimum of 3 magazines on your person. This is a vast difference in private citizen gunfights. Cops, hear me, you need to be good at your reload and not waste time on stuff like this that you just don't need to do.
Yeah, reloads are the simplest thing in the world to practice, John. And these guys, I commend them on all of their other actions, but their reloads are frankly trash. You should not be touching the base plate of your magazine during a reload unless you have some fatal malfunction where you have to rip the magazine out. Other than that, that support hand that's pulling on the magazine should already have the fresh magazine in it, as John said, and going towards that mag well. Magazine exchange or tactical reload is something you can practice, and to the point where you don't have to worry about doing it. Both the reloads were a little on the slow side. I don't want to harp too much on that. But can we talk for just a moment, John, about this situation here? I think you wanted to discuss priority of fire, and I think it's appropriate at this moment.
Absolutely. I mean, again, you've got to give priority of fire. His partner right now is just a little low left away from where he's shooting. And if you don't have your absolutely surety of your fundamentals, you put your partner at real risk here. And it takes incredible discipline to give priority of fire when you've got friendlies in your foreground. And I totally get that, and tunnel vision is real. But that's why you got to work in training on opening your vision up and seeing more of what's around you so that you don't do that. Because we're going to see in a little while how ridiculously dangerous this is. If you want to be in the fight, and you should, you've got to get up with your buddy so that there is not any chance that you are going to end up with a blue on blue here. Because the fratricide would have been an utter terrible outcome. And of course, this is a much harder shot because he's so much farther away, and I don't think it helped him with his cover there. Now that said, I do think he did a lot of really great things. So don't hear me just, bagging on this guy. I think he was a warrior here, gets in the fight. And I love the fact that as this guy comes out of the passenger side of the car, our officer is going to end up strafing over to the left so that he can get a good hit on him. We're not able to see it from this angle really well, but of course his eyes are not at the level of his badge cam. So I think he had great courage. I think he got, in the end, shots on target where he needed to, because this guy was trying to kill him. So sometimes, Mike, people think that we talk about, technique challenges and things like we're standing in judgment or like we would do better. We're just reminding all of us what we should be working on in our training and in our practice so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen.
That's absolutely the point of these videos. I hope people understand these videos aren't us just standing in judgment like we're floating on some cloud of tactical perfection above everyone else. That's not the point at all. The point is that John and I both have enough experience to look at what we're looking at and decide that, okay, this or that could have been done better. And, for example, the priority of fire thing was really important. If you go back and look at the video, I'm almost certain that when that officer, he was in the rear, when his round impacted that rear window, that's when the officer in front ducked like, oh crap, I'm being shot at. I don't know if he knew that came from behind him and not from in front of him, but it's kind of irrelevant. Once he figured out, okay, this isn't working, he got back up close on the cover with his partner and did a fantastic job. Yeah, these guys are both absolute warriors. They're the kind of people you want in law enforcement who won't shrink from the task, who won't curl up in a ball and start crying. These guys did what they had to do in that moment. And yeah, I agree. Getting around to the other side of the car, not being planted on an X, realizing, okay, I can move my feet here and put myself in a better position to end this threat and protect myself and my partner, and that's just what he did.
I also want to note here that you notice both of our officers, where did they get their hits? Where did they get hits on the guy? When they're both standing two-hand delivering accurate fire. And so I'm not saying movement is not important. It is important. But I'm saying get really good first at standing and delivering so that you know you can get hits, then add the movement piece to it. And again, these officers did what they had to do in the moment, and I think that they absolutely were warriors on that. Now, the driver officer actually really liked what he did here. He did get a couple shots downrange here and then sets himself up at the deck lid, the trunk of his pool car here. Now, the reason that I like this is that car is pretty darn decent cover. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, the windows aren't cover. I kind of disagree that when you have both a windshield and a back window, that is going to make those bullets do all kinds of weird stuff. And it actually acts fairly close to cover. And even if you're aiming at that person, almost impossible to hit them through two windshields like this.
Let's make up a new term, John. Here, we're going to coin the term concealment, because this is sort of a hybrid between concealment and cover. We talk all the time about how bullets do goofy things when they pass through glass, especially the windshield glass, because it's double laminated. It's got all that goo in the middle of it. So shooting through a windshield, that bullet's almost certainly going to change course. It's not perfect. It's not as good as a fire plug or a giant oak tree, but it's the best he can do right now while trying to keep an eye on what's going on at the same time. So I commend him here. That there wasn't really any position on either side of the car that would have been terribly safe. He would have been in the line of fire had he been anywhere other than what he was. So he was served up a poop sandwich and he took a big bite out of it and did his best.
I also think here, he's got a reload thing here. I do love seeing an officer with a properly set up pistol that is got a pistol mounted optic on it, some suppressor height backup irons, a light, which every officer's pistol needs to have. He's got a 21st century gun there, and I admire that because dot is life. Now, of course, the thing with the red dot though is it's not going to press the trigger or grip the gun for you, and so it's not some magic panacea of accuracy. It can be very helpful, but you have got to do the work. So he's run through an entire magazine and he's got to get his gun back in the fight. The dot is great. I'm a huge dot guy. If you come over to Active Self Protection Extra, I'm always shooting a pistol mounted optic on my pistols and I recommend them. I just want everybody to recognize that it's not a panacea and that, hey, again, as a reminder to officers, you need to know how to reload your gun and do it quickly.
Yeah, 100%. The reloads weren't great. I am gonna say that. I am gonna stand on my high cloud above everyone else tactically and say that I could have done those reloads faster. With that said, an important point about the dot, John, you may have said this. If you have, I apologize to our viewers, but the important thing about a dot is if you've not used one before and you get one thrown on your gun, you get it milled, you get it slapped on there, whatever. Don't just hit the street like that. You need to train with it because it is not an intuitive skill. It is something that is learned. Getting the gun out in front of you and acquiring the dot under pressure is something that can be difficult if you haven't practiced it a bunch of times. So please don't just get a dot and slap it on it. Hopefully any agency allowing people to have dot sights on their guns is going to run them through a transition course because irons and dots, two very different things. So it's important to know the difference and train on that before you hit the field.
Yeah, and I think that there's also something commendable here that our officer got behind his cover when he had time to reload. So again, this is a law enforcement skill. It's a mission thing, right? Private citizens just don't have time in their gunfights to reload, but officers do. And if you do have hard cover, getting behind that instead of your concealment, hey, we've now definitely patented that phrase.
It's a thing now, yeah.
Is a good and wise thing, right? Make sure that you are able to get behind your cover, use that cover to get the gun back in the fight. Officer did that, then gets immediately back in the gunfight. And again, getting to a place, it's this Pat McNamara thing. People are pre-programmed to pick up patterns of predictability, and our officer here gets into that place to get to a different spot. Now, that said, I want to go back here to our first reload, and I want you to recognize what our second officer does here, and that is uses his thumb position in order to drop that magazine, and he's already, you can see his support hand in the gloss on the car, going for his reload to get it back in the fight. That is the correct way to do things. Now, that said, not everybody has a long enough thumb. I don't have a long enough thumb to maintain my master grip and hit my magazine release, so you might need to adjust your grip in order to do it, but I just love the fact that he's dropping his magazine with his right hand and then he's getting his spare already into the fight with his left. Mike, I think this second one, he might have run your race there on the reload time.
He did. He definitely did better than the first guy, but again, I really want to see them faster. That's something cops can work on. It's super easy to do. Doesn't cost. You can do it with snap caps if you want to. It's a simple skill. At any rate, with that said, let's talk for a moment about grip. If you have a modern Glock, a modern HK pistol, you will see in the box comes different size grips. I think for the Glock, it's just the rear part of the backstrap grip. With a lot of HKs, you get side grips that are optional. I think it's wise to understand what those are for. So if you pull the gun out of the box and you go to the range and you have to adjust your grip, you can't quite reach your paddle release, your button release, or whatever, or your slide stop, or whatever the case may be. If you can't manipulate those things, get in that box, and if you don't know how to do it, go to your FI or your armor or whoever and go, hey, can we try another grip? Because it's a significant difference, and you may find that a smaller, slimmer grip on the backstrap and with an HK, which is a superior firearm, obviously, you have the side panels as well, which can be a little bit thicker or thinner depending on your hand size. And that works in the opposite way. If you have really big hands, you're going to want to maybe change it out for a bigger grip so that everything is positioned as best as it can possibly be. No one gun fits all hands. But that's the thing that I think a lot of people see those in the box and go, oh, that's cool, and then never think about it again.
Hey, Mike, you know what they say about a man with big hands?
No.
He uses the large back strap and side straps. That's what they say about that man. Okay, now we're going to show something here again. Remember earlier we talked about priority of fire, and I want to show you why that priority of fire is such a big deal. So as the officer here goes to move, what I want to see here is as he gets his gun back in the fight, okay, gets another good reload, back up, is there's the bullet hole from the firing earlier that the officer did. And now listen, thank God his partner was just off center from this and just off left. But that angry bee coming by, I agree with you, Mike, is probably what made him flinch downward in that moment. And thank God, no, in some big sense, no harm, no foul, big world, small bullets. But this is the kind of stuff that just makes my butt pucker, and this is why priority of fire is so important. So please don't ignore me on that. And I know it's hard, Mike, because you get tunnel vision, but that's why we work on these ideas of opening our vision up and work on that stuff on the range.
Another thing on the range you should be working on as a team, as your squad, as your task force, whatever, together. If you're going to be out in the field doing enforcement operations as a group, you've got to practice things like movement, things like okay, if the guy's shot, now we want to move up and check on him or do whatever. We need to have pre-planned how that goes. Not exactly, but generally speaking. So, for example, if this guy sees his partner is way up there, he needs to, as I say, give yourself permission to realize, okay, this is screwy. What am I doing? I'm too far back. Or maybe he should be back here with me, whatever. But fix it as soon as you can, which is what he ended up doing. But trust me, John, after this was all said and done, me and that guy would be having a very, very long talk back at the police station.
Yeah, and as a final thing, again, let's come back to the idea that says these officers did what they had to do. Guy comes around the corner here and needs to be shot, shooting at the officers, has carjacked somebody. But this is a damn shame. I mean, obviously, I think that in better times, these two officers in this, special forces veteran would be the kind of guys that would go and sit and have a beer. And so, let's remember that sometimes we see people on the channel in their worst moments, and that doesn't define every bit of their character. It doesn't define every part of their legacy. And I think this guy needed to be shot, and I think that the officers did what they had to do. But let's just all remember to do our best to then remember and maintain the humanity of people as well. And just my last call from you. If you're a veteran and you need some help and life is getting tough, please go get it. Please, I've put links in the description to the Veterans Administration to go get some help. You also have, the ability, if you're in real serious distress, to just text numbers, go online. I've got links in the description for all that to get some help so that stuff like this doesn't go down. So think about all these things. I think at the end of the day, these officers did what they had to do and covered their ass.